King Sejong sat on his throne, gazing at all the officials who had gathered. His voice echoed throughout the room. The officials exchanged glances, still not fully grasping the situation. General Choi and Yi Cheon tensed up, clenching their jaws, bracing themselves for the worst possible news. King Sejong then spoke, "Royal Chief Secretary, read the contents of the report aloud for everyone here." The Royal Chief Secretary unrolled the scroll and began reading in a clear, firm voice. As you all know, Jeonju experienced major upheaval last year, and recently, another wave of unrest has broken out. The officials listened intently. The main cause of this chaos was a massive migration from the north to the south. Pressure from the Tatar tribes had triggered a large-scale exodus, estimated at nearly 10,000 households. Hyang listened carefully, thinking to himself, a single Jurchen household usually has around 10 to 15 people. That means we're talking about nearly 150,000 individuals. Yi Cheon and General Choi Haesan whispered to one another. At that scale, their cavalry force could easily number between 100,000 and 300,000 soldiers. Their expressions grew more serious as the implications sank in, and from that total, there could be about 10,000 to 30,000 cavalry troops alone. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Hyang paused, recalling the history he had learned in his previous life. The Jurchens were not a force to be taken lightly. After conquering the Central Plains and establishing the Jin dynasty, they had inflicted great losses on both Goryeo and Song. Their powerful cavalry had allowed them to dominate the region, and every time they advanced, they left a trail of destruction in their wake. The room was now filled with tension. Everyone present knew, whatever decision they made next would determine the fate of the kingdom. According to historical records, the Jin dynasty eventually collapsed due to the Mongol invasions, which fragmented them into smaller tribes. With their semi-nomadic lifestyle, the Jurchen cavalry had become a formidable military power, and if someone ever managed to unite them again, they could rise as a strong and dangerous nation. But neither the Ming dynasty nor Joseon wanted that to happen. Until now, the Jurchen tribes had been managed through a combination of intimidation and deception. Suddenly, the left state councilor spoke up. "There's no way the Ming dynasty is unaware of such a large-scale movement. Who is leading them?" he asked, his tone laced with concern. The state secretary replied, "A man named Li Manju. What's more alarming is that the Ming seems to be allowing these tribes to migrate freely." Gasps filled the room. Some even exclaimed, "This is dangerous!" The left state councilor continued, "Your Majesty, if I may, this could very well be part of a cunning scheme by the Ming." King Sejong fell silent for a moment, deep in thought. Then he nodded. "Yes, that does make sense. Given how urgent this situation is, we must act swiftly to find a solution." Suddenly, Hyang remembered something, an old memory from his past life, back when he used to surf the internet. "Huh? What's this?" he thought. It was about King Yi Seongye's influence on the Jurchen tribes, sourced from King Taejo himself. Was his influence really this extensive? He looked at a map filled with red dots, each representing a Jurchen tribe under Yi Seongye's command. Even the names of all the Jurchen chieftains were listed. After the Joseon dynasty was established, even the Jurchens were granted official positions. At this rate, they might as well start their own country instead of Joseon. Hyang sighed. If only I had studied history more seriously in school. Still, with the knowledge he had now, it was enough. But who could have guessed he'd end up time-traveling here? He tried searching through historical records to verify what he remembered, but such access was something only a tyrant like Prince Yeon-san could afford. As he dug deeper, he found that Yi Seongye's influence over the Jurchens was fairly accurate. But the real problem was, after King Taejo, that influence gradually weakened with each succeeding king. Judging by the current state of things, the Jurchens still lacked the strength to rise. Damn it, I still can't find a real solution. How is this all going to end? With his mind racing, Hyang finally spoke. "Father, may I say something?" King Sejong turned to him and nodded. "Of course. Have you found a solution?" Hyang answered, "In this situation, rather than trying to come up with some grand strategy, I think it's better to stick to the basics." King Sejong narrowed his eyes. "The basics?" Hyang continued. "Our nation needs to first strengthen its military capabilities and overall strategy. We must ensure internal stability before we can even think of controlling the Jurchens." King Sejong leaned back in his chair. "Do you truly think that's the best approach?" Hyang nodded. "Given our current condition, it would be difficult to carry out any major strategy. If we rely solely on tactics for now, everything will come down to luck." The left state councilor silently thought to himself, "His theory is flawless, standard principles over clever schemes, effort over luck. He's avoided the usual traps that smart people often fall into." Hyang continued, "No matter how brilliant a plan is, a low-ranking soldier can't defeat a general like Shang Yu, right?" Suddenly someone blurted out, "That's true." Everyone was stunned. Their eyes darted around, searching for the source of the voice. The left state councilor immediately realized his mistake. His face turned pale as he quickly covered his mouth. Seeing this, King Sejong shook his head in frustration at his minister's behavior. The councilor instantly bowed deeply. "Please forgive my rudeness, Your Majesty." "It's fine," King Sejong replied. Then, turning to the other officials, still in silence, he said, "You all heard what the Crown Prince said, didn't you? He's absolutely right. Listen closely. Prepare a military reform plan and report back to me." In unison, the officials responded, "We obey your majesty's command." Outside, the sky had begun to darken. Suddenly, King Sejong burst out laughing. Hyang looked at him, puzzled. "What's so funny, father?" Catching his breath between chuckles, King Sejong replied, "I just can't stop laughing whenever I remember the left counselor's face. I never thought I'd see that kind of expression from such a stubborn old man. To be honest, I was thinking of postponing the military reforms. I feared rushing into it would only cause chaos, but I was wrong. We need a strong army if we're to survive the political storm brewing among neighboring nations. It seems the time has come." Hyang looked at his father, both in awe and curiosity. Just how far ahead has he seen? He wondered silently. 5 days later, in the palace's main hall, piles of documents were stacked before King Sejong. Suddenly, he exploded in anger. With a swift motion, he flung the documents into the air. "Get this out of my sight!" The officials shrank in fear, their mouths hanging open in shock. But what came next was even more terrifying. His voice echoed through the hall. "All of you are sentenced to death." Like a sudden storm, fear swept through every corner of the room. But it was all just in his head. King Sejong slowly closed the document in front of him and took a deep breath, regaining control of his thoughts. "I really want to do it, but as a king, I must maintain my dignity." After a moment of silence, he asked, "This is all you've prepared?" The officials bowed low, apologizing deeply, cold sweat dripping down their faces. The left state counselor finally mustered the courage to speak. "Given Joseon's current condition, this is the best we could do, Your Majesty." King Sejong rubbed his forehead, exhausted. Then he let out a small, tired smile and said, "Very well then. Starting today, I will dissolve the royal court and the office of Prime Minister." His words sent shockwaves through the room. The three officials in front of him flinched. "Your Majesty, what do you mean by that?" King Sejong raised his hand, touching his chin, and spoke calmly. "In their place, I will establish a new organization. I have decided to call it the White Hall." A heavy silence filled the room. He continued, "This organization will take over all state judicial responsibilities. Its structure will be completely reformed. It will be known as the Five Pillars." The officials were still stunned, struggling to process what their king had just declared. "We'll abolish the old titles and replace them with new ones." He then listed them one by one: Scholar of the East, Official of the West, Central State Advisor, Southern Secretary, and Northern Minister. Then, standing up and holding back the storm inside him, he declared, "Now that we've established a new structure and new positions, state affairs will proceed more efficiently. Joseon will rise, stronger than ever. Just by restructuring, renaming roles, and reorganizing our officials, everything will change." His words hit the officials like arrows piercing straight through their hearts. No one dared to speak. They all knew. This wasn't just some policy update. This was the beginning of a new era. With a voice as cold as ice, King Sejong continued, "So, this is the military reform plan you've proposed? This is the best solution you could come up with for Joseon's current situation?" His sharp gaze swept across the room. The ministers were now visibly pale. "If the situation worsens, what then? Will you bring an even worse plan and still call it the best? Did you even read the proposal thoroughly?" Without waiting for a response, he turned on his heel, his steps pounding the floor. "Get out! I'll handle this myself." Without looking back, he marched out, leaving behind a room full of trembling officials. The left state counselor began, "Please forgive us. We deserve to die." But before he could finish, the two officials beside him quickly clamped their hands over his mouth. King Sejong paused, then turned around and stared at them with burning intensity. He clenched his teeth, holding back words he wanted to shout. The officials held their breath, their bodies trembling. He looked each of them in the eye, then simply walked away. At that moment, the right state counselor muttered, "If you say stuff like that again, we really will die this time." The left counselor just sighed. "Old habits die hard," he mumbled. Meanwhile, in his study, the king stared at the scattered papers on the floor. His eyes narrowed, his mind racing. He picked up a small sheet of paper, jotted down a note, and stuck it to the wall, murmuring under his breath, "Is this enough? There has to be a better way." Then the chief eunuch announced, "Your Majesty, the scholars have submitted the documents you requested." "Bring them in," the king replied. He let out a long sigh, his fingers gently tapping on the table as he slowly flipped through the reports, hesitation flickering in his eyes. "If we increase the budget, we'll boost our weapons production, along with our naval fleet. That way we can secure control of the seas and strengthen our northern defenses." He paused for a moment. "But is this really the best option?" Suddenly a voice came from outside the door. "Your Majesty, it's your son, Hyang. May I come in for a moment?" The king paused. "Hyang, come in." "Thank you, father." "What happened to your eyes?" Hyang asked, looking at his father with concern. King Sejong rubbed his eyes. "I haven't been able to sleep these past few days. I've been thinking about the military reforms," he sighed. Do I look that bad? Then he leaned back in his chair, staring blankly at the ceiling. I asked the court officials to come up with strategies, but all they submitted was nonsense, so I decided to handle it myself. Hyang, still standing near the door, said, Your Majesty, your health must come first. Only when you're well can Joseon be at peace. Please take care of yourself. King Sejong gave a faint smile. I understand. Even if you hadn't said it, I was planning to get some rest today. Then, narrowing his eyes, he looked at Hyang with curiosity. But you didn't come all this way just to lecture your father, did you? Hyang hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Actually, I've been thinking about the Jurchen situation. That's why I came to see you. King Sejong raised an eyebrow. I see. I'd like to hear it. Hyang began to explain his strategy. The recent unrest was caused by Lee Manju of the Jurchen tribe. He led his people down into the Amnok River Valley. If it's true that Lee Manju was provoked by the Ming dynasty, then there must be chaos surrounding him. This is the perfect time for us to repair our relationship with the Jurchens. I also know Joseon holds significant influence over them. On top of that, the Jianzhou and Haixi Jurchen clans don't seem to be on good terms. So, why don't we invite their tribal leaders to the palace and try to ease the tension? King Sejong fell silent, thinking deeply. Hyang continued. Father, they once pledged loyalty to King Taejo. We are his descendants. I'm sure they still recognize our royal lineage. King Sejong smiled, clearly pleased. Your idea gave me goosebumps, he said. In fact, I've been thinking along the same lines. That's why I've already sent someone to monitor the movements of the Jurchen leaders. Then King Sejong asked, Would you take a look at this? They began reviewing the proposed military reform together. This system was designed by the three pillars when the kingdom was first founded, King Sejong explained. This doctrine has been passed down from generation to generation. After a long discussion, King Sejong finally asked, So, what do you think? Hyang clapped his hands in admiration. This is truly amazing. But then, King Sejong suddenly fell silent for a moment before speaking in a teasing tone. Seeing such a lack of dedication, I'm thinking of cutting the research institute's budget. Hyang's expression changed instantly. King Sejong continued. However, if your ideas help push forward our military reform, I might consider increasing the budget instead. Hyang's face lit up again. You have to keep that promise, father, he said enthusiastically. King Sejong called out, Summon the head chef. Go to the East Palace and bring the Crown Prince's new ceremonial robes. And send someone to the royal kitchen. I want plenty of tea and sweets brought in here. Hyang turned around, eyes sparkling. This is my time to shine, he thought. He remembered his teacher's lessons from his previous life. Remember this. 1 unified Silla, 2 Balhae, 3 Goryeo, 4 early Joseon, 5 late Joseon. The answer is always hidden in the question. His teacher's voice still echoed in his mind as he changed into his ceremonial robes. I see the early Joseon period refers to the 5 commands, the military system established by King Sejong after he overthrew his nephew Danjong and seized the throne. All males aged 16 and above were required to serve in the military. Armed soldiers were selected from the lower classes, those who passed examinations overseen by veteran generals. Elite troops were composed of nobles and children from influential families. The system evolved over time, but eventually collapsed during the Japanese invasions of Korea. One major reason was the massive military budget cuts imposed by King Sejong at the time. However, when the military was reformed in the early Joseon era, northern defenses were reinforced, and internal conflicts were kept under control. By following this path, the dynasty managed to avoid the looming threat of war. To survive the Japanese invasions, the defense system had to be strengthened. Hyang reflected to himself, even if it costs me my life, I must find a solution. After the invasions, King Sejong created a training manual and formed 3 main units, riflemen, archers, and infantry troops. But, wait, what was that again? Was Jang Yong-young the frontier defense officer? Hyang shook his head. Ugh, this is the result of cramming everything in one night. But then a realization hit him. No, he's right here. The source of wisdom and insight, the light of Joseon, King Sejong the Great. If Hyang spoke, his father would surely understand. And so, King Sejong and Hyang spent the entire night discussing their plans for the future. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.